All right, so you sent us this investment presentation on Broadcom, and it looks like they just hit that crazy $1 trillion market cap. So let's do a deep dive into what makes this company tick, shall we?
Yeah.
I'm pretty interested to see their journey to the top, what their strategy looks like right now and what we might be able to glean about their future.
Yeah, looking behind the curtain of these tech giants is always fascinating, especially when they hit such a massive valuation, right?
Exactly. And this one is, well, Broadcom's been around since 1961. I mean, seriously, that's like ancient history in the tech world. How many companies could even say they've been around that long and stayed relevant?
You're right, not many. And the fact that they've not just survived, but actually thrived through all the tech upheaval since the 60s, that's pretty impressive. Speaks volumes about their ability to adapt.
They haven't just been sitting around either. They've been making some pretty bold moves. Like, look at this timeline they've got in here. Acquisitions like Brocade back in 2017 and then that massive VMware deal this year. It's a pretty aggressive growth strategy.
Oh yeah, definitely. Those are textbook examples of what we call strategic acquisitions. In tech, it's not always enough to just grow organically. You need to grab expertise, new markets, and Broadcom, well, they've been doing just that.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's dive into the numbers a bit. Broadcom at a glance. $51.6 billion with a B dollars in projected revenue for 2024, a $9.3 billion R&D investment, and a patent portfolio of something like 21,000 patents. Wow, I mean, those numbers are staggering, aren't they? The kind of stuff that makes investors drool, I'd imagine.
Well, on the face of it, absolutely. Those are impressive figures. But smart investors, they don't just look at the surface. They want to see what's beneath those numbers. And what I see here is a commitment to innovation. I mean, that R&D spend, that's not a company sitting back and relaxing.
So they're not content to just ride the wave.
Not at all. They're actively shaping the future, which is essential in such a rapidly evolving industry. And don't forget that huge patent portfolio. It's like a fortress around their business.
Gotcha. So they've got the brains and the resources, but what are they actually doing with all that? I'm looking at this breakdown of their business. They've got two main segments, right? Semiconductor solutions and infrastructure software. It's kind of like they're playing both offense and defense in the tech world.
Right, and that's one of the things that makes Broadcom so interesting. They've got a strong presence in both hardware and software. The semiconductor side, that's their hardware play, and then the software gives them that extra layer of control.
I see. So it's more than just selling the pieces. They can actually offer a more complete integrated solution to their clients, right?
Bingo. That kind of synergy is a huge advantage in the tech world. It's a powerful selling point.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's take a closer look at those segments, because it looks like there's a whole bunch of different divisions within each one. What are we looking at here?
Well, it's a pretty diverse portfolio, that's for sure. I mean, they've got everything from high-performance connectivity solutions that are essential for data centers to the tech that powers wireless communication in our smartphones. Their reach is pretty extensive.
So basically, it's safe to say that a lot of the tech we use every single day relies on Broadcom in some way.
Yeah, it's highly likely. They're kind of like the silent partner in our digital lives.
Huh. That's both kind of creepy and amazing when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just chips and networks, right? I'm seeing a section here on software and enterprise-class solutions, and they've got a whole range of offerings there, everything from mainframe solutions to cybersecurity.
Huh.
So where does that fit into the bigger picture?
Well, remember that VMware acquisition we talked about? That was a strategic move by Broadcom to establish themselves in the cloud computing and virtualization markets, which are, let me tell you, growing like crazy. VMware was already a major player in those areas, and now all that expertise is part of the Broadcom arsenal.
Ah, okay. I'm starting to see how all the pieces of the puzzle fit together. But hold on a second. Before we move on, I got to ask about this hybrid cloud thing. I'm looking at this slide on the VMware hybrid cloud portfolio, and honestly, I'm a little lost. I mean, what exactly is a hybrid cloud? Is that like a cloud that rains both sunshine and cats and dogs?
Haha, no, nothing that dramatic. Okay, so think about it this way. In the past, businesses would typically store all their data and run their applications on their own servers, right? Their own private cloud, if you will. But then along came these public cloud providers like, Amazon and Microsoft. They've got these giant data centers that companies can basically rent space on.
Right, so instead of owning and maintaining your own server farm, you just lease space in someone else's massive cloud.
Exactly. But with a hybrid cloud, you get the best of both worlds. Businesses can keep some of their sensitive data and applications in their own private cloud while also utilizing the public cloud for other things. It's all about flexibility.
So they can pick and choose what goes where depending on their needs.
Precisely. And that kind of flexibility is becoming increasingly valuable for businesses of all sizes. And with the VMware acquisition, Broadcom is in a great position to, capitalize on that trend.
Yeah, that's pretty clever, right? They're anticipating where the market is headed and making sure they're positioned to be a leader. And it seems like they've been making a lot of smart moves, especially when you look at their financial performance. They're highlighting consistent revenue growth, strong gross margins, and tons of free cash flow. I mean, color me impressed. Is it really as good as it looks?
From a financial standpoint, Broadcom appears to be in fantastic shape. But remember, financial statements are kind of like a snapshot, right? They capture a specific moment in time. The real question is, can they maintain this performance over the long haul?
It's a good point. So it's not just about looking good in the moment. It's about having a foundation that can support long-term growth.
Exactly. And that brings us to something else I wanted to touch on, their dividend policy. Broadcom has a track record of consistently increasing its dividend payouts. You can see it pretty clearly in this growing common stock dividend since FY11 chart.
Ah, dividends. I mean, who doesn't love a little extra cash in their pocket? Is that something investors really look at?
Oh, yeah. A growing dividend is generally seen as a very positive sign. It means the company is confident in its ability to keep generating those profits and is willing to share that success with its shareholders.
So they're not just hoarding all the wealth.
Nope. They're rewarding those who've invested in them, which is a good sign.
Okay, so we've got a company with a long and storied history. They're making strategic acquisitions. They've got a really impressive and diverse portfolio, and their financials look fantastic. It's starting to make sense how they hit that $1 trillion valuation, isn't it?
It is. But there's one more piece to this puzzle that we need to talk about. Leadership. These slides here, corporate leadership and division leadership, give us a glimpse into the team that's calling the shots.
And why is leadership so crucial in this context?
Because the tech industry is, well, it's notoriously fast-paced, constantly changing, and full of complexity. You need a team that can keep up, right? Having a strong and experienced leadership team can be the difference between success and failure. These are the folks setting the strategy, making the big decisions, navigating all the challenges.
So it's not just about the tech, it's about the people behind it. That's interesting. And I see here they're wrapping things up with a slide titled, Well-Positioned for the Future, which I'm guessing is their way of saying, hey, we're going to keep winning, so invest in us. But is that really the case? I mean, are they as well-positioned as they claim to be?
Well, that's what we need to find out. While Broadcom has a lot going for it, let's be real. No company is immune to challenges. We need to examine the potential risks, the opportunities, all sides of the equation to get a clear picture of their future prospects.
Okay, then let's do it. We'll explore the potential headwinds and tailwinds that Broadcom might face in the coming years. Stay tuned, folks. So Broadcom's definitely got a pretty impressive track record, this massive portfolio, and a leadership team that's been around the block a few times. But let's talk about the road ahead. I mean, can a company this big actually stay agile? Keep up with the pace of innovation in the tech world?
That's the big question, right? And it's something investors really need to think about. One thing that jumps out at me is, well, just their sheer size. Managing a company of this scale with operations all over the place, different industries, global reach, I mean, that's going to be incredibly complex.
Yeah, I guess bigger isn't always better, huh? I mean, they've got all these resources, but could that size actually become a liability?
It's a classic double-edged sword, right? Resources are great, but they can also lead to, well, bureaucracy, slower decision-making. And in tech, that can be a killer.
Like trying to turn a cruise ship on a dime. I can only imagine the effort it takes to keep everyone moving in the same direction.
Exactly. And any misstep, even a small one, it can have these ripple effects throughout the whole organization. So investors need to think about, well, is Broadcom's leadership really up to the task? Can they handle the complexity of this beast?
And speaking of challenges, let's not forget about the competition. The tech world is a jungle, right? I'm sure Broadcom's got its fair share of rivals gunning for them.
Oh, absolutely. The semiconductor market, the software market, they're incredibly competitive. I mean, Broadcom's facing pressure from all sides. You've got companies like Intel and NVIDIA on the semiconductor front. And then on the software side, you've got giants like Microsoft and Oracle, and they're not standing still.
So it's this constant battle to stay ahead of the curve. Past success doesn't guarantee anything, does it?
Nope, not at all. They've got to keep investing in R&D, attract the best talent, make those strategic partnerships. Investors need to be asking, is Broadcom putting its money where its mouth is? Are they really investing in the areas that will keep them competitive?
That's a really good point. And it brings up something else I've been thinking about. All these big tech trends everyone's talking about, AI, the Internet of Things, 5G. I mean, how's all that impacting Broadcom's strategy?
Well, AI especially, that's a game changer, right? It's going to transform the entire tech landscape in the next few years. Broadcom needs a solid AI strategy. And I mean, not just incorporating AI into their existing products, but maybe even developing whole new AI-powered solutions.
So it's not just about having cool tech. It's about understanding how that tech solves real problems
Right.
and making sure they're the ones providing the solutions.
Exactly. The companies that win in the AI age, they're going to be the ones who can see those disruptions coming and figure out how to, capitalize on them.
Okay, so we've got size, competition, AI. That's a pretty daunting list of challenges, right? Anything else keeping Broadcom's leadership up at night?
Well, there's always the bigger picture, the macroeconomic environment. Inflation, interest rates, supply chain issues, those things can hit even the biggest companies. And let's not forget about geopolitical risks. Trade wars, political instability, those can create a lot of uncertainty, especially for a global company like Broadcom.
So even if they're doing everything right internally, there are still those external forces that could throw them off course.
It's like, sailing a ship through a storm. You can have the best crew, the strongest ship, but sometimes you just got to batten down the hatches and ride it out. Broadcom's going to need to be resilient, adaptable. Can they handle the rough seas?
Okay, we've talked a lot about the potential downsides, the risks. But let's switch gears for a second. What are some of the exciting opportunities out there for Broadcom, the tailwinds that could push them even further?
Well, one thing that's not going away is the growth of cloud computing, right? As more and more companies move their operations to the cloud, the demand for everything Broadcom offers, networking, storage, software solutions, it's all going to increase. And that VMware acquisition, that puts them in a prime spot to be a leader in the hybrid cloud space.
So they're kind of like, selling the shovels to the gold miners? Everybody needs their tech to make the cloud work.
That's a great way to put it. They're providing the essential infrastructure for the digital world. And then you've got all these billions of devices coming online with the Internet of Things. Broadcom's going to benefit from that too.
Right, the Internet of Things. So it's not just one wave they're riding. It's multiple waves, right? Cloud computing, IoT, AI. Sounds like they've got a lot of irons in the fire.
They do, but that also means they have to be smart about, prioritizing. Where do they put their resources? Are they spreading themselves too thin? Investors need to look at that too.
Okay, we've talked about the tech, the market, the competition. But what about the people, the ones actually making all this happen?
Yeah.
How does a company like Broadcom attract and keep the talent they need to compete in such a cutthroat industry?
That's a huge question, and it's something a lot of people overlook. In tech, talent is everything. You have to create a culture that, attracts the best and brightest. Engineers, designers, developers, you got to keep them happy.
So it's not just about having cool tech. It's about having a cool place to work, too.
Exactly. Competitive salaries, good benefits, opportunities for growth, work-life balance, all that stuff matters.
And let's not forget about diversity and inclusion. Creating a workplace where everyone feels valued and respected, that's not just the right thing to do. It's good business sense.
Absolutely. Diverse teams, they're more innovative, more adaptable, better at understanding a wider range of customers.
So Broadcom can't just be laser-focused on the technology, right? They need to build a strong, diverse team if they want to succeed in the long run.
You got it. At the end of the day, it all comes down to the people. The tech industry is driven by human ingenuity, creativity. Broadcom needs to create an environment where that can flourish.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground here. Broadcom's journey, the challenges, the opportunities, even the human element. But before we wrap things up, let's go back to the beginning. What does all this mean for investors? What are the risks, the rewards of putting your money on Broadcom?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And there's no easy answer. Every investor needs to, do their own assessment. What's their risk tolerance? What are their goals? Do they really understand the company, the industry?
So there's no simple yes or no answer. It's more complicated than that.
Investing is rarely black and white. It's all about weighing the potential upside against the potential downside. Does the risk-reward profile fit your situation? That's what you have to figure out.
Okay, so let's try to break that down a bit more. We'll take everything we've talked about and see if we can offer some insights that might help you, the listener, make your own informed decisions about Broadcom. Stick with us. All right, so we've spent a good chunk of time really digging into Broadcom, from their early days all the way up to this trillion-dollar milestone they've hit. We've looked at their overall strategy, how they're making money, the challenges ahead, and all the exciting possibilities. But let's bring it back to the main point. What does this all mean for someone thinking about investing in Broadcom?
Well, they've certainly made a strong case, haven't they? That track record of growth, consistently making profits, those smart acquisitions. They've definitely shown they can adapt. And their portfolio, well, it covers some of the most crucial areas of the tech world.
So yeah, on the surface, it looks like a pretty good bet, but I'm guessing there are some things investors should, watch out for before they jump in with both feet.
Right. Of course, there's always some risk, right? One thing that I always look at is how much a company depends on just a few big clients. Broadcom's got a few really big customers that bring in a lot of revenue. Now, those relationships seem solid right now, but what if things change?
So they're kind of putting a lot of eggs in one basket. It's a good reminder that even these big companies aren't invincible, right? What else should investors be considering?
Well, the tech industry, it's kind of famous for its ups and downs. Broadcom's done well in the past, but what if the economy takes a hit? The demand for their products, especially things like enterprise software, high-performance computing, it could all slow down.
So investors need to keep an eye on the bigger picture, right? How the economy is doing and how that might impact Broadcom.
Exactly. And let's not forget about, all the competition. The tech world moves fast, right? New innovations all the time. Broadcom has to keep spending big on research and development just to stay ahead. And that could cut into their profits.
It's a constant race, isn't it? They can't rest on their laurels, even with all their success.
That's right. And then there's, those big acquisitions they've made, especially VMware. Huge potential there. But integrating those two companies, that's a big job. Investors should watch how that goes.
Makes sense. It's not just about buying a company. It's about making it all work together.
Right. And even if Broadcom does everything perfectly, there are things they can't control, right? Geopolitical stuff, new regulations, cybersecurity threats. Those things can pop up out of nowhere and really impact their business.
So even with all their strengths and their planning, there's still an element of, uncertainty. Investors got to be ready for some ups and downs.
That's the nature of investing, right? Balancing risk and reward. Broadcom, yeah, they offer the potential for big returns, but it's not a sure thing. Investors need to do their homework, really understand the company, its strengths and weaknesses, and be prepared for, the market to do its thing.
Okay, so we've covered a lot about Broadcom, the good and the bad, the opportunities and the challenges. For everyone listening who's thinking about investing, what's the big takeaway here? What's the most important piece of advice you'd give?
I always say knowledge is power. Don't just read the headlines or those glossy investor presentations. Dig deeper. Understand the tech, the market, the competition, and, who's running the show.
So do your research. Don't just buy into the hype.
Exactly. The more you know, the better decisions you'll make.
And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into Broadcom. We hope you found it informative, maybe even spark some interest to keep learning. Thanks for joining us.